we're here, Camp 2021. We made it. It's day 3. Just did the instructor testing yesterday. And last year was a little dicey, but this year, I think it's gone very well so far.
It has. The rebound this year was great. Last year was obviously a lean year because of the effects of COVID and the pandemic and everything else. We still snatched victory from the jaws of defeat, but the rebound this year, having almost 100 people, is awesome. And as you said, we had very successful instructor testing, created a couple of new certified instructors, a number of associate instructors, people achieving certificates of proficiency, our equivalency of a black belt. Just great all the way around. And I think one of the things that I think stood out this year, I changed the format a little bit in the sense of really trying to get everybody from where they are right now kind of to that next level. So we focused a lot on not only solidifying the basics, making sure we kind of get back to basics if we've been out of training a little bit, but also once you kind of get back in that groove, okay, let me set a goal that takes me to the next step.
Yeah.
And that way everyone progresses, everyone continues to evolve.
Absolutely. I noticed this year there was a bigger focus on the basics, but from my first camp, it seemed like we really got into some stuff quicker. Like we developed those basics and then incorporating a lot of the CBC, and I just felt like people came along quicker on a lot of the compression lock stuff.
Yeah, I did kind of accelerate things a bit. One of the great things about camp, it's an extraordinary venue in the sense that we have so many experienced MBCers, so many instructors. So when it comes time to, especially having folks who are somewhat new to MBC, or if they're learning a new skill, maybe like yourself, you've been to camp a couple times, you have a good foundation of skill, but there's still things that are brand new to you. Mm-hmm. So when we introduce that stuff, what we always do is have the instructors pounce on people, make sure that they get the personalized instruction that they need. And it allows us to really kind of accelerate the pace overall. Just we can present a lot more information in a shorter period of time. And also by kind of compartmentalizing it, where we take the novices and we say, okay, you guys focus on this. And sometimes literally in the same instruction, I could say, novices do this. If you know this next step, do it. So for all the folks where they've got that aspect of it, they're like, okay, cool. They can immediately jump in and refresh the basics and then progress to the next level.
Yeah. Yeah, the at the pre-meeting, if you will, to camp, you demonstrated one or two things. I was like, I've not actually seen that, even though I'm a DLP member. Still haven't come across that. So many surprises, and then there's been a lot of little variations and twists and advanced things that I've seen here at camp that is just like, oh, you can do that, and oh, that's just a tiny little tweak on what we're already doing, and it makes it that much more effective.
Yep, and that's one of the main things with MBC. It's interesting because people look at martial arts, and in many cases what you have when you have a traditional martial art was the same process we're doing right now, which is continuing to evolve, continuing to develop the best stuff we possibly can. But then when the founder dies, everything basically dies with it.
Yeah.
You're frozen in time at that point. And then everyone who's left is like, okay, well, this is what we've got. And rather than continuing the mindset, they have this frozen body of knowledge, and then they argue over interpreting it and everything else.
Yeah.
So
and the infighting and yeah.
Exactly. And what you find is, I firmly believe that even in traditional martial arts, good instructors would teach different people slightly differently because you have to adapt to their physical attributes. So if you only got a portion of that because you're a tall guy, a short guy, whatever else it might be, whatever your physical attributes are, that instructor may have catered to giving you the best stuff for your body type. And then somebody else got a slightly different spin on the same material. And then those guys argue. In reality, what you got is the totality of the system and how it adapts to different people. And it's actually in its entire form, it's a much better form. But when you have martial arts that have been passed down for generations and everything else, it gets to the point where preserving the art in its pure form becomes more important than what the art was for in the first place, which is self-defense.
The martial aspect.
Exactly. So, I mean, if you want to enter a tournament and do forms and just have perfect form and use it as a physical culture type of thing, that's one thing. But if you're really training for self-defense, then you need to be adaptable. It's also one of those things where the nature of the threat we face changes as well.
Yeah.
So if there's an emerging threat where, hey, people are now attacking each other with machetes, because you end up maybe with in some cases gang activity, in other cases maybe the transplanting of people of certain ethnic groups or whatever, where they might have, hey, they're comfortable with that, and that becomes their weapon of choice, and now it gets introduced, unfortunately, into violent crime.
Yeah.
If that's an emerging threat, then we need to respond to that. We can't say, well, my art doesn't have a solution for that.
Right. Yeah, one thing I love about MBC is the instructors. They're like, well, this is what you do if this person is bigger or smaller. Or, hey, you have a smaller stature. Here's how you need to adjust. It's not a like one size fits all. I think like the applications are, but the ability to adapt it here and there for people of all abilities. I was talking to Eric Mays yesterday, and we kind of talked about how there's a lot of unassuming people here, and that's what really shocked me when I got here. Was like, oh wow, like a lot of these people you would see on the street, and you'd be like, oh, that's a nice old grandpa, or this is this seems like a rather slight gentleman, and like you start training with him, like, oh, this person would whoop my ass.
Right, exactly. You get a compression lock, and it's like, holy crap, Yeah, exactly right. And that's that's also one of the things that I love about the way the MBC family has evolved, is that, again, you can train martial arts for a lot of different reasons. And when you look at the martial arts institution, especially when you have traditional Asian institutions that get transplanted here, it comes from a different culture. They have different norms. They have different formalized ranking and all that type of stuff. And in some cases, what ends up happening is people take that, add a little bit of ego, and they're off the charts as far as like, okay, well, I'm a black belt, you're a brown belt, you're a yellow belt, and they institute this caste system and all this other kind of stuff. It's good to learn respect.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a great way of character building and everything else. But it's better when you respect everybody, and you respect people based on your understanding of who they are as individuals. That's a better way to go. And we really strive for that. And the people who are attracted to that also tend to be the people who are lower key. They're not looking for that ego feed or anything else. It's just like, hey, I want something that's effective.
Yeah.
I've done my research, and I also want to train in a community where I don't have to put up with a bunch of bullshit. I don't have to deal with, this caste system or anything else. I just really want to focus on, developing skills. And we tend to attract people who, again, they're kind of that gray man, gray woman type of thing.
Right.
Lower profile, lower key, just nice
As
people.
I sit here with a mohawk.
Well, there are exceptions to every rule. But I'm just envious. But I mean, really, it's all really mellow, smart people who have done their homework when it comes to self-defense, and they're the people that we really want to cultivate and make part of the family.
Yeah, and what I've noticed over time is it's sort of a lot of other martial arts schools. You have your standards to ego ratio. Mm-hmm. And with MBC, it's flipped on its head. It's the opposite. There is almost negative ego. There's like none there. And the standard is so high. The instructor testing is a very challenging thing. And even if someone, tests and seems to be successful, that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to become an instructor. It's still, you guys have the final call.
Exactly right. So yesterday, one of the things that I'm trying to do is lay the groundwork also for MBC to continue beyond me. So we had all of our mostly certified instructors. We also had a few associate instructors who trained with me on a regular basis personally. They were also welcomed into the group. And literally after the testing process, it's, everyone gets a round of applause for completing the process and for their accomplishment in just doing that. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't mean they've passed. So then what we did was we sat down and we literally spent probably about 90 minutes going through and critiquing each person. So if there was an instructor who was in the conga line and he had firsthand experience with that person, hey, I did this drill and they screwed this up. Okay, I'm trying to watch everybody at the same time. They become my eyes and ears, and also, experientially, working with different people. And we just went through and it's like, okay, this person, how'd they do the full critique. And then what we also did was discussed, okay, well, this guy, he followed me to Rapid City and taught and studied with me there because he was preparing to test. He was in Florida when I was teaching at a seminar there. So you have people who, when we look at the totality of their investment in becoming good at MBC, everyone has a bad day, or everyone under stress, maybe they screw something up, and it's like, well, how could he make that mistake? Well, when I know that, hey, I did that drill with him in Rapid City, or I did that drill with him in Florida,
Yeah.
I know he can do it. He vapor locked a little bit here today, but that's okay. It allows us to be forgiving of those things while still maintaining a very high standard. And that process, it was great because all the instructors rose to the occasion. We had really insightful comments. And again, it laid the groundwork for how do we move forward. If I'm not around anymore, they can do that on their own.
Yeah.
They can continue to conduct testing and be able to choose their peers and maintain that high level standard.
Absolutely. And we're also at, 8,000 feet here about?
About 8,100.
8,100, yeah. So that, depending where you're coming from, that can be a real challenge.
We've got people who literally have come from sea level to here. So when you look at that, the fitness aspect is obviously also a huge thing. But mostly what we do, it's like when we go into it, some of the guys who were involved in the testing process for the first time as instructors, they said, okay, how does this work? How hard do I go? So again, when we look at that idea of evaluating individuals, if we look at somebody and it's like, okay, we had a guy who tested who was 62 years old when he took the test. Okay, so obviously still in very good shape, former military, but at 62 years old, you're less physically capable than you would be for a guy who's 40 years old.
Right.
So what we do is we say, okay, cool. This is his level. This is his max output from a physical standpoint. He wants to be an associate instructor. Let's take him to about 85% of that. Let's bring him out until the execution of his technique starts to fall apart. Take him to the very edge and then reel him back in and make sure he does it technically correct again.
Right.
So you're pushing people really hard. Certified instructors, we take that to about 95%. And we just really rock people hard. We try to wring everything out of them that we possibly can. And in the process, we're staring into their soul and making sure that they're digging deep and they're giving us everything they've got.
Yeah. Well, it's a lot of staring because how many instructors were here to watch the test?
Well, the group of instructors we had involved yesterday, we probably had about 15 folks, I would say. I didn't count exactly, but probably about 15 people, all eyes on. And I mean, literally, it's just you're under a microscope while you're doing all this stuff.
Right. I mean, nothing's going to be missed during this test.
We're human too, but we try to be pretty thorough.
Yeah. I mean, 15 sets of eyes plus you surrounding you. It's a pretty intimidating challenge.
Plus, you have the tactile aspect of once we get to the conga line, you're going hands-on with that person. So it's like, okay, I did this drill with that person, and I know exactly how they perform because I was the guy who was doing it with them. So that gives you another level of understanding of their performance.
Right. And if someone, so you have effectively your certificate of, I can't remember what proficiency. And then you have affiliate instructor.
Affiliate instructor would be the next level up, and that can be done with or without a certificate of proficiency. So certificate of proficiency, what that means is you tested, you demonstrated your skills under stress, and we basically validate your skills, the equivalent of like getting a black belt in a traditional martial art. Affiliate instructor, what that means is that you have the ability to teach, and that can be proven either by being an instructor of another discipline, and then having lots of MBC knowledge to go along with it, but not yet having tested formally. Or in some cases, what we have usually when people show up to camp to test, what they're shooting for is certificate of proficiency and associate instructor. So those two, during the testing process, what we also do is we essentially have almost kind of like playing Jeopardy. So we go through and while they're stressed, while they're out of breath from having done stuff, we pause for a moment. It's like, okay, let me ask you questions about MBC.
Yeah.
So I'll ask them critical elements of, what are the 3 criteria of a knife grip? What are the 4 defensive responses we have? And literally key elements of understanding our curriculum. Asking them that stuff so that they can answer that, again, under duress and demonstrate their intellectual knowledge of MBC. If they do that successfully, they become an associate instructor. If they fall a little bit short at that, then the affiliate would be essentially the next level down.
Right.
And then for a certified instructor, what that means is you've gone through the process to become an associate. You've tested successfully. You did well as far as your intellectual knowledge. Now your job as an associate is to go out and teach for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Develop that teaching ability, then come back, repeat the physical test all over again,
Mm-hmm.
and have to teach in front of the entire group. And what we have is deck of cards where I have all the critical skills, all the drills and everything in the system written down. Shuffle the cards, you pick a card, and literally it's anything in the system that is a testable element. You get to pull that card and have to teach it on demand.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's no way to validate their ability to teach the whole system without taking a month to do it.
Right.
So that's the best way we figured out how to do that, kind of the ultimate pop quiz. You have to teach anything in the system, just as if a student walked up to you and said, you know what, hey, I'm having trouble with this. Could you help me with this? And it's a totally non-linear event where, oh, okay,
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a teacher's edition to go back and brush up on this before I teach it. You got to do it on demand.
Right. So you must be an associate instructor before you can jump to instructor?
To be a certified instructor.
To be a certified instructor.
Yep. And the certified instructor, that level, again, you have to go through the entire physical testing process all over again.
Mm-hmm.
We push you harder than we do the associates. And also what you have to do is, again, on demand, teach in front of the entire crowd. So teaching for 100 people. Some people who want to be certified instructors, they may, as an associate, and it's like, oh yeah, I've got a training group. I got, 4 or 5 guys, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And they have that comfort level of being able to teach for people that they've kind of handpicked or people who've gravitated toward them over time. It's way different when you've got 100 people, some of whom you've never met before, and it's like
Right.
you're kind of that deer in the headlights type of thing. So we want people to have that level of confidence and that level of skill as well.
Yeah. And as an associate, like doing the testing for associate and instructor, it all is done at camp.
Yes. Currently, this is we've only tested outside of camp on 2 occasions. One was in Denver, and it was basically an alibi thing for a couple of guys. One guy got injured during the camp, so we set up a separate testing event for that. And it was one time that I ran testing out in Ohio, and it was just because we had a strong contingent of folks out
Mm-hmm.
there. And it was, it went well, but it's not the same as doing it at 8,100 feet in front of 100 people.
Right. Yep, that's a different ball game.
Yeah, but I think that process will probably evolve a bit. Again, as we move into the future and we get to the point where maybe we'll have testing, where we'll have an instructor committee doing testing,
Mm-hmm.
or I also run instructor development workshops where I'll bring people into Denver to do it. So it's still, for many people, coming from sea level to Denver is still a challenge.
Yeah.
Maybe not as much, but that would give us a venue for testing as well.
Okay. You've had a career at Spyderco for a long time. You've done Marshall Blade Concepts for a long time. Camp is sort of a massive undertaking. There's a lot that goes into it. There's like incredible sponsors that donate a lot of stuff. How do you do it all?
To the best of my ability. Yeah,
I'm just looking for tips and tricks for myself because I look at all the stuff you're doing. I'm like, I don't even know how you keep it straight.
I really try to focus. First of all, what's great about it when you look at Spyderco, when you look at Marshall Blade Concepts and everything, Spyderco has been very supportive of MBC, which is great. They give me the latitude to be able to teach seminars and to do that stuff. They see that as a positive association. They don't formally sponsor me. I run MBC separately from my job at Spyderco, but they're very, very accommodating as far as allowing me to do that because they see that it's a positive association. They see it's a good synergy.
Yeah.
So that helps a lot. But what it really comes down to is when you can get people together like this, and you see the people, as you mentioned before, serving folks of this caliber is gratifying. And when I can get out there and teach something, and you see the heads nodding, and you see people getting it, and you get the feedback, that aspect of it, knowing that you're helping people to be safer, that's what fuels the energy side of it. So I know that I've got to do a lot of other administrative stuff and everything, but every time I get to that point where, hey, I'm frustrated that I've got to, send out a bunch of emails or wrangle this, or this showed up late, or this got misshipped
Yeah.
somewhere, and just dealing with all the administrative minutia and everything. When I get bogged down in that, then I just kind of stop and think for a second. It's like, wait a minute, when I teach somebody how to do a split X and not get stabbed, when we get feedback from people who have had to use the techniques and it's literally saved their lives, you tap into that energy and it's like, okay, cool. That's what the ultimate win is.
Yeah.
So, sending out an email, no big deal. Okay, I'll get up early. I'll spend a few extra minutes and get it done.
Yeah. So reframe it.
Right.
Get the correct perspective. Feel the gratitude of
Right.
what you've accomplished.
What you're doing is you're always kind of redefining what's my end goal. And okay, if this is the shit that I've got to go through to get there, that's okay.
Yeah.
I'm not going to necessarily enjoy it, and I'll just get it done and drive on, because I know there's something good at the end of it, or
Right.
there's something good that has happened that makes that investment of time and that effort worthwhile.
Few things that are easy are worth doing. The whole instant gratification culture, and I think it just leaves people feeling really hollow. There's some element of struggle that we need to go through. Like, challenges need to be challenging.
Right.
Otherwise, it's just kind of boring.
Well, and especially, that applies to everything across the board. But when you look at what we're trying to do here, you're providing training to people so that if they're caught in literally a worst case scenario, somebody trying to kill them, somebody trying to, commit some type of violent crime against them, they need to be resilient. They need to tap into that, that will to survive.
Absolutely.
And if you go through life and, everything is handed to you, everyone gets a participation award, nobody wants to make anybody feel bad or anything like that. Getting punched in the face once in a while is a very sobering thing, but it also is a very empowering thing, because it's like, okay, that was a hard thing, and I gritted my teeth and I fought through it, and now I'm a better person because of it.
Mm-hmm.
That's what builds resilience in every sense of the word. And if you lead your life always looking for the easy way out, if you lead your life in a way where it's like, okay, I'm going to shy away from challenges and I'm not going to ever endure hardship, I'm going to do everything I can to avoid it. If something bad does happen, you're ill prepared to do it.
Right.
So it really, natural selection has gotten us where we are over millions of years, and that continues every day. That process is never ending, and that's not just natural selection in the sense of, evolution of species and all that kind of stuff. It's natural selection in the sense of your ability to endure life and to endure life's hardships. When,
Yeah.
when something bad happens, how do you deal with it? Emotionally, can you say, you know what, I had a bad day, now I need to curl up in the fetal position for 3 days because, it wasn't fair that I got, bad things happen to me.
Yeah.
No, suck it up, fight through, and it makes you stronger in every sense of the word.
Well, the blade only gets sharpened through friction. I don't know if that's a little too on the nose, but
It's true. It's true. What you have to have is, and again, we're back to using the analogy, grit. So no matter how you look at it, grit is sharpening the same thing. What you want is that honed edge, and you've got to do that through the ability to, in some cases, even grind away part of something, sacrifice something to create something that's more acute and is more a keener edge that prepares you to better deal with hardship.
It must have been a long weekend. We're getting really punny here.
Yeah, it's all good. It's all good. But it's, when it comes to, I think, dealing with life in general, every aspect of it, relationships, when it comes to, your boss cooked off on you or whatever else it might be, somebody dented your car or whatever, all those things, they're challenges, and how you face them defines who you are as a person.
Yeah.
And when you look at extreme challenges, the idea of somebody attacking you or something like that, if you can't handle all the little stuff, then the idea of learning a skill where you might have to use a knife to defend yourself, that's kind of way outside your wheelhouse.
Right.
So again, when we look at the people that we attract, it's not only those people who are humble and who are, not egocentric or anything else. It's also people who typically have that type of resilience. And again, that's what makes this community so special.
Yeah. Well, when we were in Ohio last month, I think perhaps it was you just had asked like how many people had been involved in a situation where they were like assaulted or had a crime committed against them. And I've known the statistics, like Tom Gibbons' class, he's really big on statistics, and you bring up statistics in some of your seminars.
Sure.
But it's just surprising to see that many hands go up, because, if you're a good person, like people are like, oh, good things are going to happen to you. And I think that's true. But there's a lot of bad shit that happens.
Yeah.
And, you have to be prepared to face that. You can't just, there's this huge movement of just outsourcing your self-protection.
Right.
And it doesn't work. It's not nature.
And it's also, the first step in all of it, and the first step in dealing with any kind of hardship is accepting the fact that it can happen to you, or it is happening to you. So denial is a really terrible response to any kind of hardship. So when you're simply in that denial, well, this isn't happening, the longer you put it off, the longer it takes for you to embrace the idea that, okay, this sucks, and now I need to make it unsuck.
Yeah.
How do I fix this? The longer it takes for that process, the less effective the process becomes. And when it's something where you have to react quickly, then you could be so far behind the curve that you have no chance to survive.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons why in everything we do in MBC, we also talk a lot about accepting or understanding the problem. So when we look at videos of knife attacks and everything like that, people sometimes are like kind of cringing and are like, wow, that's really gross. I don't want to see that. And it's like, no, you're here because you want to develop skills to not let that be you.
Yeah.
So first you have to understand the nature of the problem. Then you can appreciate our approach to solving or preventing the problem and making sure that what we do is relevant to real world needs.
Right.
We don't want to have that artificiality. We don't want to have a false sense of complacency. And those types of things, when you look at that, that's your motivation to train. It's like, wow, that could happen to me. I'm not going to let it.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to face the visceral reality.
Right.
And, otherwise there's no way to prepare.
Right. And again, that's across the board. So when you look at it, it's like, hey, could I lose my job? Yeah, potentially I could. If that happens, what would I do? So you start, you want to obsess over something, but you war game your way through it, and you say, okay, cool. I've got savings. I've got this. You basically mentally prepare yourself the same way you would in developing a martial arts or a defensive skill. And it's just that process, no matter what you're applying it to, makes you better as a person. Just makes you more resilient, more capable, more adaptable, more survivable.
Yeah. All these things considered, what's on the horizon? What's next?
Hopefully a full night's sleep after camp would be really nice. That would be a good thing.
That's a very short term, immediate piece.
Yeah, immediate stuff.
Full night's sleep is good.
Yeah, what it comes down to is I'm not getting any younger. So, time takes its toll. What I want to do is continue to develop my instructors, continue to refine their ability to teach, their ability to understand MBC and the process that created MBC, and keep driving them to essentially continue the mindset that got us this far. So far, most of it's been me. Now, getting them to do that is really what I want. And most likely this next year is going to be our 20th anniversary.
Wow.
So 20th camp, and it'll probably be the last one that I administer myself. So what I'm looking at is the idea of getting my instructors involved, whether camp as an institution continues in its current form, or whether it mutates into something else where maybe we do, hey, let's host a big event on the East Coast, or let's host something, somewhere else. I'm still going to continue to teach, still continue to do that stuff. But as far as, camp as an institution, I think 20 is a nice round number.
Yeah.
And then what it does is it, again, prepares them to kind of pick up the ball and run with it.
Yeah.
So I would still be the founder, still be the instructor, but essentially they would do the admin, and it teaches them how do I develop the skills that I need to run an event that allows us to share MBC with a large population of students,
Right.
and really kind of point them in that direction so that they can pick that up and continue that aspect of things as well.
Yeah. Events are a different ballgame. You kind of have to be a part-time fireman.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a lot of stuff. A lot of people think, okay, this is great. They don't know what goes on behind the scenes. So I've already been coaching a couple guys as far as feeding them emails. This is how I wrangled all these sponsors. This is where we got all of our stuff from. This is where we got the camp shirts. This is where we got the knives. This is where we got our challenge coins and everything else. So essentially all the administrative logistics, kind of giving them an insight into that so they can see how the process works.
Yeah.
And then we'll just kind of see who's willing to pick up the ball and how things will mutate. But that's really the direction I want to go. So we'll make next year. It's always special, but we'll make it really special. Because again, it'll be probably the last one that I do myself.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're an old pro at trade shows, and I've done quite a few myself.
Yes, you have.
That's always good training
Big time.
to learn how to fix things and be prepared.
Yep.
So yeah, it's good to be able to transmit that to these other guys.
And what that does is it also empowers them. So as they, pick up the responsibility as instructors. I mean, a lot of them are teaching actively already.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, if they wanted to do, hey, I want to do a big seminar. Okay, awesome. That becomes part of the developmental process for them as well. So, it's interesting because people talk about instructor development. When we do instructor development workshops and everything, they'll come in and it's like, so what techniques are we going to work on? It'd be like, let's talk about liability insurance. What? And it's like, well, that's a necessary thing. If you're going to teach as an instructor, that's one of the things you need to have. It's like, oh man, I never thought about it. Okay, we got a lawyer who's going to talk to you about setting up an LLC. What?
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, you want to be able to take business deductions and all that kind of stuff. When you're buying stuff, how do you take a tax deduction? And so we give them insight into that part of it too, so they can be a good professional businessman as well as an MBC instructor.
I never thought about that. I mean, just running, having a couple businesses and having, done all the trade shows and stuff, you kind of get used to that. But I never thought of it from an instructor standpoint that a fair amount of the instructors, they have day jobs. They're not necessarily running their own business. Some of them do.
Right.
But that's a big learning curve that I'm sure that they don't necessarily think about.
It is, and if you can simplify that, if you can take the lessons that we learned the hard way, and say, okay, cool, if you're going to do this, here's a great vendor for that. You want to do challenge coins, but you don't want to do 100 of them. Okay, here's a guy who can do small quantities.
Yeah, those damn MOQs.
Yeah, exactly. When you look at that kind of stuff, it's like, okay, he wants to do something special, but he doesn't need to, T-shirts, polo shirts, all that kind of stuff. I don't want to have a garage full of stuff from the Camp 2015.
Right.
So how do I hit the quantities that I need? And just all those logistics. If you want to make something special and make an event special, that's part of the process as well. So it really becomes a holistic approach to educating people and empowering them to be instructors. Some guys will just be, again, I'm going to have a small group of students. We'll do our thing, in my garage or whatever it is, and that's perfectly valid as well.
Right.
Not everyone aspires to the bigger stuff, but if they do, I want to try to let them benefit from my experience in that regard.
Yeah. Yep. Give them the skills they need to succeed.
Yep.
Yeah. It's going to be an interesting future for MBC and see how things go.
Yeah, I'm still I still have still writing for the USCCA.
Mm-hmm.
So Concealed Carry Magazine. Basically, they brought me back out, and I'm writing an article in every issue, and we're going through probably about the end of 2022 with that. So we committed to a bunch of stuff, laid out the entire curriculum that we want for that period, and that's great exposure, great publicity for MBC.
Mm-hmm.
So that side of things continues. I still plan to continue teaching seminars, and I'm just relying more and more on my hosts to do a lot more of the legwork and the administrative stuff. I'll show up and do the stuff that I love to do the most, and not have to focus on the admin side nearly as much.
Yeah, which is going to be great. I mean, for you, it's more hands, less work, and you get to enjoy the fruits of your labor after 20 something years. So
yeah. So I mean, that's kind of the direction I want to go, and then I also want to. My ultimate goal is again taking my experience and being able to share that. So if I get to a point where me doing MBC or doing CBC, if for whatever reason my health doesn't allow it, or I get so old that I can't do something, then the idea of me trying to teach something that I'm no longer physically capable of doing well doesn't make sense, and it's not an accurate, authentic demonstration of the way the technique should be done. Then my job is to teach what works for me and share that with people who share the same physical characteristics that I do.
Yeah.
So if I get to the point where I'm walking with a cane, we've got an entire cane system, we'll focus on that, and I'll change gears and I'll let the knife guys continue. You guys go do MBC. I'll still advise you. I'll still be involved in everything else, but maybe that's not my primary go-to weapon anymore.
Right.
Because my physical attributes don't support it. Hopefully not.
Yeah.
I don't want to get to that point. But I've seen so many accomplished instructors that get to that point where it's like, okay, I've got to teach a seminar and I got to do the stuff I've always done, and their bodies don't allow it anymore. So what you see is a really sad representation of somebody who's a kind of a shadow of what they used to be.
Right.
And they're going through the motions, just like that's not going to work. You can't bring the intensity and the physical attributes you need to that technique, so you're just kind of faking your way through it.
Right.
I'm not going to do that disservice to anybody.
Yeah. Well, and it's great that you have the self-awareness to be able to, evaluate that, because like you said, there's been quite a few people throughout history who don't. And it's unfortunate for the system. It's unfortunate for the people who want to learn that system. And, it's like no one should be going to someone who's obese as a personal trainer,
Right.
They got to be able to walk the walk.
Exactly. Yeah. And, it's one of those things, especially with what we're doing. If, one of the things we talk about a lot is the idea of the 4 pillars of self-defense. So physical attributes, skills, weapons, mindset. The outcome is net violence. Okay, so whatever you can do to produce the ability to inflict violence on your attacker and physically disable him, so he has no choice in the matter. It's not a choice of him wanting to stop. You're making him stop. You're breaking things that allow him to be functional, or you're cutting or destroying things that allow him to be functional to attack you. So when you look at that physical attribute side, your skills should be increasing as you get better and better and you train more and more. But you always have to be cognizant of the fact of, okay, if my physical attributes can't do it, even if my skills are good, when I have to introduce weapons or change gears in some way to produce that net violence, I always have to find that balance. And as we get older, the idea of, back in high school, I used to do this and I could throw down and all. You need to be smarter than that. If your body doesn't allow you to do it anymore, then you change gears. And it's a constant process of self-evaluation to get there. Fortunately, I'm still able to move reasonably well and demonstrate the techniques the way I want them done and the way that they're designed to work.
Yeah.
If we get to the point where that's no longer the case, then I cheat more and I use weapons sooner. And then I teach people who are in a similar situation. So what's going to happen is my expression of, MBC and its related systems basically won't necessarily be called MBC, whatever it's going to be, even the unarmed stuff, that hurts a lot and everything else. All of that is going to evolve with me, and it simply becomes, all that curriculum that I created, all still valid, provided you got the physical attributes to support it.
Right.
Age and treachery guys, come on over here. If your physical attributes don't support it, this is the way I cheat now based on what my body allows me to do.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, you never know. You might learn some things as that happens, too, that you didn't think of before.
Absolutely.
Which, everyone will then benefit from. So.
Yeah, you look at, like the idea of blinding fast draw stroke. Okay, well, the more astute I become, the more observant I become based on experience and, longevity, then it's like, oh, this doesn't look quite right. I'm not going to wait for the fast draw stroke. I'll prep my draw. So now that's the age and treachery part.
Right.
The treachery just becomes being more proactive and less reactive.
Awesome. Well, like a fine whiskey, camp MBC, you get better year after year. So I just really appreciate, being able to be a part of this and having the honor to sit down with you and be a friend to you and learn from you as well.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your friendship and brotherhood. I also appreciate your sponsorship of Martial Blade Camp, being here as a product sponsor and allowing everybody to benefit from that as well. Just all the way around. Thank you for everything. I really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure. We'll continue to do it as long as we can.
Thanks, brother.
Thank you.
Overseas folks.
Yeah.
So travel restrictions still kind of held us back as far as that goes. Hey, Marty. Sorry, man. Okay, sorry.
It's okay. We still love you.
Not me.
Well, now you're on the shit list.
Start again.
Yeah. So